Light on the window, petals in the air. Afternoon leaning on a wooden chair. The street hums softly, nothing in a rush. Even the silence speaks in hush. A needle finds a circle drawn in fragile black. Dust in quiet spirals, never looking back. Sleeves along the wall, faded shades of blue. Somewhere in the corners, a trace that once felt new. Sunlight through the glass spills across the floor, lingering like footsteps near the door. The season turns its page without a sound. Something almost spoken, never fully found. The sad day's still turning, though the song has changed. Petals keep on falling, nothing rearranged. Warmth along the pavement, shadows softly sway. Spring is in the window, but not entirely here to stay. Brushes on a snare drum barely leave a mark. Low notes from the bass line glow inside the dark. Outside branches shimmer pink against the sky, holding to the moment before it passes by. The clock above the counter moves but doesn't chase. Time sits in the corner with that familiar face. Some things fade in daylight, some in subtle ways. Some remain between the lines of half-remembered days. Side A still turning in a quiet room. Blossoms in suspension, balanced on their bloom. Every falling petal finds the same old street. Spring is standing near me, still slightly incomplete. If the needle lifted, would the echo stay? Would the air remember what it didn't say? If the door had opened just a breath too soon, would April feel different underneath this moon? Somewhere in the static, between the notes that play, a shape without a shadow refuses to fade away. Side A still turns, circles never end. Petals on the pavement, drifting with the wind. Light across the window, golden as it sees. Spring is softly blooming inside unfinished dreams. The record keeps revolving, the blossoms slowly fall. Nothing says goodbye here, not anything at all. Just a quiet afternoon, bathed in tender gray, and something gently turning long after it should fade. Evening leans gently against the glass, cherry colors fading as the daylight passes. Dust and golden ribbons floating slow, Some things settle softly, some refuse to go. The shelves hold quiet stories, spines worn thin by time. Familiar shades of paper, like old unwritten lines. A record hums in circles, low and unafraid, turning through the silence of choices never made. Outside the branches shimmer, blushed in amber light, holding to their brightness before they lose the fight. There's a space between the notes where nothing needs to speak, a place between the moments, strong and yet so weak. Between petals and dust, something lingers on, not entirely present, not entirely gone. Sunset on the window, soft against the floor. Spring stands in the doorway, but doesn't cross it anymore. Brushes trace the rhythm like footsteps down the hall. Low bass lines are breathing, barely there at all. The counter by the register, still warm by afternoon. Shadows stretching longer beneath the rising moon. Pink drifts through the skyline, then slowly turns to gray. Every bloom is brilliant just before it fades away. The air holds faint reminders of what it doesn't name. A warmth without a language, a spark without a flame. Between petals and dust, the light begins to bend, edges growing softer where beginnings almost end. The street hums low and steady, cars in distant flow. Spring is almost touching something it can't quite know. If windows kept reflections from afternoons like this, would colors stay suspended in moments we still miss? If records never finished their final fragile spin, would silence feel less certain than the quiet settling in? There's a tremble in the sunlight as it leaves the room. Petals in slow motion, balanced in their bloom. Just piano, just breath, just the turning sound of something not yet gone. Between petals and dust, the evening softly falls, amber light retreating from the record-covered walls. Blossoms on the pavement glow before they fade. Spring doesn't say goodbye, it simply rearranges shade. The last light leaves the window, but warmth remains inside. Petals meet the pavement where quiet colors hide. The record keeps revolving, though daylight slips away. Between petals and dust, something chooses to stay. Twilight gathers slowly along the window frame. Cherry colors dimming, but never quite the same. A silver line of traffic beyond the painted trees. Evening folds the daylight into minor keys. The needle finds the groove again without a word to say. Circles drawn in patience at the close of day. Posters on the brick wall, fading at the seams. Faces from another time, living in between. Electric piano whispers underneath the air. Something almost present, almost standing there. Half in light, half in shadow, the room begins to sway. April holds its breath before it slips away. April half in light, half in quiet blue. Blossoms in the distance, neither old nor new. Evening on the pavement, soft against the sky. Spring is leaning closer but not asking why. Baseline moving gently, like footsteps out of sight. Brushes trace a heartbeat under city light. Outside, petals hover in amber street lamp glow. Suspended in a moment, uncertain where to go. The door remains unopened, the bell refuses sound. Time rests on the counter without being found. Every shade grows deeper, every edge grows thin. Twilight draws a curtain from where the day has been. April half in light, half in undertone. Blossoms drift in silence across the stepping stone. Neon signs awaken down the narrow lane. Spring becomes a memory before it turns to rain. If dusk could keep a promise written in the air, would twilight hold its color a little longer there? If petals stayed suspended before they chose the ground, would echoes feel less fragile without a leaving sound? Electric chords are blooming soft against the night. Every note is searching for what escapes the light. half in light, April light, April half in light, April light. Ooh, April light. Ooh, April light. Ooh, April half in light, half in tender gray. Blossoms turning slowly as daylight slips away. Streetlights bloom like flowers across the quiet town. Spring stands in reflection before it settles down. The record keeps on turning, though evening settles in. Petals lose their color on sidewalks growing thin. Half in light, half remembered, the window holds the hue. April fades to midnight, still carrying a trace of blue. Breeze against the glass, paddles lifted high. Evening holding colors longer in the sky. The street begins to shimmer under amber tone. Spring leans through the doorway but enters on its own. Posters curl at corners, edges worn and thin. A record sleeve half open, like something settling in. A needle finds its circle without a trace of haste. Every quiet measure leaves a gentle taste. Outside the branches tremble, pink against the air. Light moves through the blossoms like fingers through soft hair. There's a warmth that doesn't speak, but lingers in the room, like petals in suspension before they choose to bloom. The window keeps the color long after sun has gone, holding on to shades of rose the daylight rested on. Petals in the crosswalk, turning slow and wide. Spring moves through the evening with nowhere left to hide. Brushes sweep in rhythm, soft along the snare. Bass notes fall like footsteps floating through the air. A passing train in distance, low and silver lined, carries fading daylight further down the line. The counter light is glowing, dim but warm and near. Shadows stretch like memories that almost reappear. Some things don't require names to quietly remain. They drift between the heartbeats like soft unfallen rain. The window keeps the color even as it fades. Amber turning violet across the vinyl shades. Petals on the pavement glow beneath the street. brushes the silence with something incomplete. If glass could hold a season, pressed between its frame, would blossom stay suspended without a need for name? If wind forgot its motion and circled back once more, would petals find their branches as they had before? Guitar lines are breathing underneath the tone. Every chord is reaching for what was never shown. Petals drift like embers, fading as they fall. Spring remains in fragments along the painted wall. The record slows its turning, the street grows calm and low. A trace of rose in darkness refuses quite to go. Just beyond the light. Rain threads the window in silver lines, blurring the edges of streetlight signs. Petals press gently to quiet ground. Spring underwater without a sound. The bell above the doorway doesn't ring tonight. Only distant engines passing through the light. Vinyl stacks in shadow, spines turn thin and gray. A record hums in patience, as if it plans to stay. Droplets on the glass race and intertwine like sentences unfinished between your hand and mine. There's a static in the air, soft and low, something almost audible beneath the undertow. Soft static memory under April rain. Petals on the pavement, darkened by the stain. Streetlights bending sideways through a silver scene. Spring becomes a mirror of a half-remembered dream. Brushes on the snare drum barely leave a trace. Bass notes roll like thunder, far from this small space. Neon in reflection breaks on every drop. Colors running slowly down the record shop. A sleeve left open on the counter's edge, like a quiet promise balanced on a ledge. Somewhere in the rainfall, footsteps fade from view. Water keeps the outline, but washes out the hue. Soft static memory blooming in the night. Petals pressed in puddles, holding fractured light. Every drop repeating what it cannot say. Spring beneath the rainfall slowly slips away. If the rain kept falling past the break of dawn, would the blurred reflections still remain upon the quiet of the window, the hum beneath the tone, the space between the raindrops where nothing stands alone? Electric guitar swelling like a distant call, every note dissolving against the wall. Soft static memory circling the air, petals pressed in silver, going nowhere. The city breathing slowly under midnight gray. Spring beneath the rainfall doesn't need to stay. The record keeps revolving, though the street is blurred. Rain writes on the window every unsaid word. Soft static memory, low and slow again. Petals in the water, drifting toward the end. Neon on the pavement, silver after rain. Streetlights drawn in color across the window pane. Petals cling to concrete, darker than before. Spring stands in reflection outside the record store. The door remains untroubled, the bell untouched by sound. Only passing headlights sliding on the ground. A slow bass line is moving, measured calm and low, circling the silence with a steady glow. The rain has washed the daylight from posters on the wall, leaving only outlines where shadows used to fall. Night arrives in layers, soft but clearly drawn. What the rain had softened now feels almost gone. Under a quiet marquee, light hums overhead. Petals on the asphalt where brighter hours once spread. brushes keep a heartbeat closer than before. Electric chords are blooming warmer at the core. Windows hold reflections sharper than the day. Every color certain in its own restrained way. Traffic in the distance, low and silver line, carries off the rainfall but leaves the shine behind. There's clarity in darkness after something ends, like streets that keep their shimmer long after the rain descends. Under a quiet marquee, the glow becomes precise. Petals on the crosswalk, pressed in lacquered ice. Spring no longer hiding in mist or silver seam, standing in the open like a waking dream. Oh, if night could hold the color, rain returned to stone, would reflections stay even when alone? If puddles lost their mirror at the break of day, would neon keep its memory or quietly fade away? Guitar lines in answer, soft against the beat, every chord resolving but not complete. Under a quiet marquee, light steady and thin, petals dry in silence where rain had once been. The city stands in balance between what's lost and known. Spring beneath the streetlights, finally on its own. The record keeps revolving, smooth and low and clear. No thunder in the distance, no trace of yesterday's tear. Under a quiet marquee, night settles slow, spring across the pavement, learning how to glow. Paper on the counter, folded once then twice. Ink that never traveled past a thin blue line. Outside the branches shimmer under softened light. Petals moving slowly through the open night. Envelopes half written rest beside the sleeve. Words that found their rhythm but chose not to leave. The needle keeps its circle, calm and unaware of sentences suspended in the quiet air. Street lights trace the window, gold against the pane. Every drop of evening, free of summer rain. There are without a sound, like footsteps in a hallway, no longer around. Letters never mailed, rest between the lines, folded into corners of unfinished signs. Petals on the sidewalk, pressed in fragile rose. Spring without announcement comes and gently goes. Brushes find the heartbeat closer to the skin. Bass notes hold the silence, settling within. The clock above the doorway moves but doesn't chase. Time keeps perfect distance in this narrow space. A passing train in midnight, low and silver bright, carries distant echoes further from the light. Some words stay unspoken, not from fear or doubt, but because their meaning was already written out. Letters never mailed still retain their weight, edges softly curling as they sit and wait. Petals in the crosswalk glow beneath the sign. Spring without permission crosses every line. If paper kept its warmth long after hands withdraw, would ink begin to tremble at what it almost saw? If silence had a measure beyond the closing chord, would absence feel less certain than what was stored? Guitar answers softly underneath the tone, every note admitting what was always known. Letters never mailed, drift without a name. Petals on the pavement, never quite the same. The window holds the evening in amber, rose and blue. Spring moves through the silence, leaving something true. Paper on the counter, unfolded once again. Ink beneath the lamplight, free from need or wind. Letters never mailed, no longer have to go. Spring inside the quiet already seems to know. Midnight on the window, no one left to pass. Streetlights stand impatient in the darkened glass. Petals on the pavement, dry beneath the glow. Spring without an audience, learning how to grow. The shelves keep quiet company, spines in tidy rows. Every faded photograph knows what silence knows. The needle finds the vinyl, soft and just unsaid. Outside the branches settle, barely moving now. Color turned to memory on a quiet bough. There's a kind of stillness after all the rain. Not relief, not longing, just an open plain. Bloom without witness under muted skies. Petals fall unnoticed where the city lies. No need for reflection, no echo to pursue. Spring in its own measure, quietly passing through. Brushes touch the rhythm, laid and very low. Bass notes drift like lanterns in a steady glow. The clock above the counter moves without demand. Time no longer pressing on an open hand. A draft beneath the doorway barely stirs the floor. Air that once felt heavier doesn't weigh anymore. Some things don't require a second look behind. They rise and fade in season, unburdened by design. Bloom without witness in the midnight blue. Petals in the crosswalk, silvered by the hue. Street lights keep their distance, shadows thin and slow. Spring without announcement knows the way to go. If no one traced the blossom pressed against the ground, would it lose its meaning without a naming sound? If nothing held the outline of what had come before, would color still remember what it was blooming for? Piano answers softly with space between each tone. Every chord releasing what it once had known. Steady light, petals finding rest in the arms of night. No need for explanation, no turning back to see. Spring in quiet motion, simply choosing to be. The record slows its circle, but never fully stops. Midnight on the window, color drops. Bloom without witness, no question, no demand. Spring upon the pavement, settled where it lands.
A final turn in silence, circles growing thin. Light across the counter where the day had been. Petals near the doorway rest without a sound. Spring upon the threshold, no longer looking down. The vinyl spins in patience, one last quiet round. every groove familiar, every softened sound. Dust and golden stillness hangs and disappears. Nothing left unsettled, nothing left to hear. Outside the branches steady, under paling sky. Color almost faded, but not asking why. There's a breath before the ending, a pause before release. Not an act of leaving, more settling into peace. When the needle lifts, the echo doesn't break. It lingers in the rafters, for memories unsaved. Petals on the pavement lie where they have fallen. Spring no longer reaching for what it once was calling. Brushes barely whisper, then quietly withdraw. Bass notes stretch like shadows across the wooden floor. The clock above the doorway moves without a claim. Time no longer circling around a certain name. Streetlights hum in amber, soft against the wall. Evening holds its balance, not rising, not to fall. There's a kind of clarity after chords resolve. Not everything requires something to absorb. When the needle lifts, the room remains the same. Shelves and quiet posters, free of any blame. Petals near the crosswalk, dry beneath the glow. Spring stands unburdened, ready now to go. If circles were the only way, understand the sound. We're lifting from the record, means something lost or found. If silence follows music, like dusk follows day, perhaps it isn't ending, only another way. Piano holds the answer in a single line, every chord releasing what was never mine. Complete. Petals rest in evening at the city's feet. No sudden wind to carry, no shadow left to shift. Spring inside the window after the needle lifts. The turntable is quiet, the light begins to fade. Nothing left unfinished, nothing left delayed. When the needle lifts, the circle finds its end. Spring across the pavement no longer needs to bend. Early light on the window, faint and pale, cherry branches waking, beyond the rail, petals caught in corners of the quiet street. Spring in slow arrival, soft and incomplete. The door unlocks in daylight without a sound. Dust and silver ribbons floating to the ground. Shelves in patient stillness, waiting for the hour. Nothing asked for yesterday, nothing asked for power. Outside a breeze returning, gentle and aware, carrying the color back into the air. Not every bloom is fragile, not every fall is lost. Something circles softly without a cost. Spring still returning, even after night. Petals find the pavement, then find the light. Windows hold the morning, clear and newly drawn. What had once been faded is quiet and reborn. Brushes touch the rhythm, lighter than before. Bass notes walk in sunlight across the wooden floor. A record waits in silence, ready to begin. Circles without burden, free of where they've been. Footsteps near the doorway, measured, calm and slow. Daylight fills the corners with a gentle glow. There's a kind of brightness that doesn't need to rise. It simply stands in presence without disguise. Spring still returning after midnight's hue. Petals in the crosswalk, washed in morning blue. Every branch remembering how to reach again. Color finding courage in the light of 10. If seasons move in cycles beyond our sight, perhaps what feels like ending is folded into light. If petals leave the branches only to renew, then every quiet falling is something passing through. Spring still returning. Ooh, spring still returning. Ooh, spring still returning. Oh. Windows open slightly, air in tender flow. What had once been silent now begins to glow. The record waits for turning, the branches softly sway. Spring across the pavement, choosing still to stay. First light on vinyl, silver and thin. Morning through the window, quietly stepping in. Petals in the gutter, softened by the night. Branches catching daylight, learning how to write. The lock turns without effort, the door opens slow.
Air moves through the silence in a careful flow. Shells in gentle shadow glow in pale gold lines. Dust becomes a shimmer in diagonal designs. No echo from the evening, no trace of rain, only light assembling across the wooden grain. There's a clarity in morning after everything has turned. Not a lesson spoken, just something quietly learned. First light on vinyl before the needle falls. Sun across the album spines, painting fragile walls. Petals near the doorway, dry and soft and still. Spring without resistance, bends but does not spill. A kettle somewhere distant breathes a gentle tone. Footsteps down the sidewalk, measured and alone. The record waits in patience, black against the white, holding every circle out of sight. Outside, a breeze in motion moves from tree to tree. Color in the branches, simple as can be. Nothing asked for yesterday, nothing needs repair. Morning has a way of clearing out the air. First light on vinyl, clearer than before. Sun across the counter, reaching to the floor. Petals in the crosswalk, faint but holding on. Spring in quiet presence, already moving on. If every dawn is gentle, after dark is blue, perhaps what felt uncertain was always passing through. If circles start in silence before they start to spin, maybe every ending lets another in. First light on vinyl, shining thin and white. Windows open slightly, letting warmth inside the petals near the threshold, bright against the stone. Spring without announcement, comfortable alone. The record has not started, yet the day has begun. Light upon the surface, quiet as the sun. First light on vinyl, simple and true. Spring across the morning, wearing something new. Sun through the sleep, dust turning gold. Light on the counter, gentle and bold. Branches in motion, pink in the air. Spring at the doorway, already there. Windows open slightly, letting daylight move across the rows of vinyl, across the wooden grooves. A melody beginning without a trace of strain. Rhythm in the floorboards, soft and uncontained. Petals on the sidewalk, caught in passing feet. Color in the open, warm and discreet. There's a pulse in the daylight, measured and slow. Not asking for memory, not asking to know. Sun through the sleep, spilling on the sound. Circles drawn in brightness, spinning round and round. Petals in the crosswalk, turning with the breeze. Spring in full alignment, moving with ease. Brushes keep the heartbeat clearer than before. Baseline walking steady from the door to door. Shadows falling angels, sharp and thin and clean. Every shade intentional, every line serene. Outside laughter carries light across the street. Blossoms in the branches, firm upon their seat. Nothing here is fragile, nothing held too tight. Daylight has a way of setting colors right. Sun through the sleep, warm in every tone. Music in the open, standing on its own. Petals bright as linen, dancing in the air. Spring in quiet confidence, everywhere. If noon can hold a moment without a need to fade, perhaps what once felt distant was only light delayed. If branches bloom untroubled in the open sky, maybe every turning needs no reason why. Without demand, spring in full expression, settled where it stands. The record finds its motion, smooth and unafraid. Sunlight on the vinyl, nothing left in shade. Sun through the sleeve, simple as the day. Spring in quiet rhythm, choosing now to stay. Door left in the breeze, curtains half undone. Footsteps on the pavement, turning toward the sun. Windows wide and listening, air begins to move. Petals slip through daylight, finding where to land and prove. Bassline walks a little faster, drums begin to rise. Rhythm finding courage in ordinary skies. The record spins more freely, needle steady now. Sound no longer hesitant, it doesn't ask you how. There's a shift in the breathing, a tilt in the air. Nothing breaking open, just quietly aware. Door left in the breeze, let the daylight through. Petals crossing over shades of pink and blue. Nothing held too closely, nothing forced to stay. Spring in gentle motion, choosing its own way. Sha-da-da-da, sha-da-da-da, yeah. Sidewalk conversations, light against the wall. Blossoms leaning outward, not afraid to fall. Guitar lines are clearer, drums begin to speak. Not in loud insistence, just steady, not weak. Every tone is present, every chord aligned. Momentum without hurry, calm but undefined. You don't have to chase it, you don't have to run. Sometimes all that's needed is leaving something undone. Oh, door left in the breeze, let the colors slide. Petals on the crosswalk, drifting side to side. Nothing here is fragile, nothing here is strange. Spring in quiet courage, soft but uncontained. If light can cross the threshold without a sound or plea, maybe every opening was always meant to be. If air can change a room without tearing it apart, maybe all this movement was waiting at the start. Turning slowly in the sun and shade. Music in the doorway, clear and standing free. Spring in steady motion, simply letting be. Curtains moving lightly, footsteps down the street. Afternoon unfolding, measured and complete. Oh, Gold along the floor, shadows growing long, light across the counter, soft but strong. Sun begins its leaning edges turning bright, dust becomes a ribbon floating in the light. Record spinning amber, needle drawing lines, every quiet second carefully defined. Petals near the doorway, no longer in flight, resting on the pavement, holding what was bright. There's a calm in the fading, not lost, not retreat, just warmth rearranging the day at your feet. Gold along the floor, lingering in tone, every chord illuminated, even when alone. Petals in the evening, still in gentle bloom, spring without a hurry, settling the room. Bassline softer, deeper, drums with open space, guitar less insistent, time slows its pace. Windows hold reflections layered in the glass, outside light is shifting, letting moments pass. Nothing here is ending, nothing breaking down, just the weight of daylight lowering its crown. Have to hold it, you don't have to say. Some light is most honest at the close of day. Gold along the floor, warm in every sound, petals in the stillness, soft upon the ground. In suspension, clear without demand, spring in quiet balance, resting where it stands. If shadows stretch farther, it's only because light has been generous with all that it was. If evening is forming, it isn't a fall, it's simply the sunlight changing its course. Gold along the floor, fading into hue, petals in the twilight, holding on to you. Nothing lost to distance, nothing left unsure, spring in soft surrender, present warm, secure. Light along the vinyl, almost out of sight. Gold upon the floorboards, turning into night.